Now, let's have the music from Game of Thrones. Here we go. Keep it going, I think. It's very stirring stuff. Flaming torches, mythical beasts, facial hair, snow. I always think it's snowing there, isn't it? Winter, what is it they say? Winter is
coming. Or winter is here now.
Oh, winter's here now.
Winter's
okay.
here.
That's the voice of a fan, Danielle Ward, comedian, television writer. Welcome, Danielle.
Thanks for having me.
We've also got Georgia Humphrey in our studio in Cambridge. She's a cosplayer and she works when she can at Game of Thrones conventions. Georgia, welcome. Good morning.
Nice to be here. Hi.
And joining us on the phone, I think we've got Ruthy Websdale. Hi, Ruthy.
Hiya.
Paid up fan as well. So we'll get all their opinions in a moment. First of all, if you don't know a thing about Game of Thrones, it's based on a series of novels by a man called George R.R. Martin. They're called A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's the final series. It's series 8. Simulcast in the UK. Kicked off last night, 2:00 in the morning, in fact. It's now available for UK viewers on Now TV and on Sky Atlantic from 9:00 tonight. Right, that's enough of a plug for Game of Thrones, although we'll plough on a little bit in that vein. So, Danielle, sell it to me. Why would you bother?
Game of Thrones is like House of Cards, only with more naked people and some dragons. It's a great political drama, because I was adamant I wasn't going to like Game of Thrones when it first started because I don't like fantasy. And my husband said, you'll really enjoy it. And we sat down and watched the first series. No fantasy in it. First series is just politics and people killing each other and some naked ladies. And you get drawn into this world.
Only naked ladies?
There's lots of naked men as well. But then, that's just one element of it. There's very few naked people in the later series. It all focuses on politics.
By the way, there will be no spoilers in this conversation. You, I think, would describe yourself, Danielle, as a relatively circumspect fan. Game of Thrones has its place in your cultural life.
I love Game of Thrones. I consider myself a fan. I couldn't tell you what Mark Gatiss' character's called. I know he runs the bank. I'm that sort of fan. I know the big names. I know the big key players. I have my expectations for the finale, but I don't. The nearest I get to cosplaying is spending time naked, and then I'm like many of the women in the first series of Game of Thrones.
Georgia, I think you are more of a devotee in the nicest possible way. Outline the importance of the female characters and why we should, in fact, admire them.
Well, I mean, I've had quite a complicated relationship with the show because of the representation of female characters, because it is very good in certain respects. You have these sort of amazing warrior women going around killing people, all that good stuff. But for a long time, the show did also have a lot of issues with sexual violence, which meant that I was very critical of it for quite a few seasons. But I do think that's something that the show has kind of learned from, because there was a lot of outcry, particularly from female fans, about just how awful it got in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read the books either, so I don't. I mean, are these shows a faithful adaptation of the novels, Georgia?
To a certain degree, yes. It's difficult to say because the show has at this point moved past where the books are at. George R. R. Martin is yet to bring out the latest one. So we obviously don't know how faithful they are now. But that was actually the thing that was the cause of quite a lot of discontent for fans, was the fact that there was sexual violence being added to the show that didn't exist in the books, where scenes where a sexual encounter was consensual in the book was made non-consensual in the show, which is an issue.
Yeah, well, to put it mildly. And also this idea of, I think the phrase sex position was coined for some of this stuff, where a relatively important part of the plot would be revealed in a brothel for absolutely no good reason. Any concern with that, Georgia?
Yes, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not the nudity especially became sort of gratuitous. I know that Emilia Clarke had it written into her contract at one point that
she is one of the
more
actors, yeah.
Yes, who plays Daenerys Targaryen. She had it written into her contract that she wasn't going to do any more nude scenes because it just got to a point where it was a bit silly, I think. That, yeah, as you say, all these plot points would be given, people invading, whatever, and there'd just be a naked woman for no real reason.
Ruthy, was there ever a point when you lost faith with Game of Thrones because of its attitude to women?
Well, I came to the show having read the books. I guess I kind of knew what I was getting myself in for. There were some points where I thought, is this really necessary? Especially with a lot of, as mentioned, the background brothel scenes. You did think, does this really need to be happening here? But at the same time, I think it's important to remember that this is supposed to be set in the Dark Ages, where, women did have far less rights, and that does, obviously have a lot of impact on the show and what is happening to women in it. The fact that then the women characters, though, you've got some tremendously strong women, and you do have a really nice variety. Also, partly in ages, what I like about it isn't just, the young, desirable women who are doing good things. You've had quite a lot of older women who have proven to be, real masterminds in the game. And that I think is very nice. And it's been important to show that despite the awful things that have happened to a lot of the female characters, they have, in general, had power to change their fate and to change where they're going.
So when you dress up and do cosplay, who do you dress up as, Ruthy?
I've been Melisandre a couple of times. She's one of the Red Priestesses, and I had a lot of fun. I'm always very keen to make characters who are magic users. I like ones who are a bit mysterious and who you're not sure exactly what they're up to. I've also cosplayed as one of the Dothraki handmaidens. So the Dothraki are a kind of, tribal people. They follow Daenerys Targaryen for quite a lot of the series. And I had a lot of fun dressing up as one of those. I got to meet Jason Momoa, who plays Khal Drogo, while dressed up as a Dothraki handmaiden. So that was very cool for me.
Life doesn't get any better than that. It's like me getting into IKEA before anybody else. It's absolutely fantastic. So, Georgia, I gather that some of your cosplay in the past you've had to make a few changes, haven't you? Because you were being somebody.
Yes. So when I first started Game of Thrones cosplay, I worked for Sky and for HBO briefly as doing sort of promotional events, and I cosplayed Ygritte, Jon Snow's girlfriend. And she's been dead in the show for quite a few seasons now, so she's less popular. So now that I'm working for ThronesCon, I have to do someone who's a bit more relevant.
ThronesCon?
It's a convention that's Game of Thrones specific in Manchester. It's on the 18th of August, if anyone would like to buy tickets. And now I do Yara Greyjoy instead, because she's still alive, hopefully.
Yes, well, yes, yeah, that's it. I have read the theory that at the end of this series, the arc will actually end with female supremacy. That is a theory, Danielle. Do you think it's likely to come true?
I really hope so. The interesting thing, if you want to get into the mechanics of female portrayal in Game of Thrones, one of the things that you do have to hold on to is all of the best characters are women. All of the women are incredibly complex characters.
And they are no less vicious than many of the men.
But some of them are also heroes, and some of them are warriors, and some of them are brilliant little tiny girls that can command armies. So the women are by far the more interesting characters. And I would like to see a woman on the Iron Throne. Personally, and no one else is going to like this, I would like to see Cersei Lannister, because I think she's the best character.
Well, she was the one who was let down last night by the absence of elephants. And I think that meme has been very, very popular. But you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it because I've got a 17-month-old baby and I'm not allowed to watch Game of Thrones first thing in the morning.
Oh, I don't know why. I'm sure. Have you read my parenting guide? It's absolutely fantastic. No, it's brilliant. It's yet to be written, but it's going to be absolutely brilliant. I want really to get out of you, Danielle, the story about your therapist. So can we just hear it, please?
Oh, when I was pregnant, so during season 7, I was pregnant and I had a little bit of CBT for anxiety, and I went to see a therapist, and he was explaining to me why anxiety is an important mechanism in the human psyche. And he said, fight or flight's really important because, for example, if you look back at men in history, they would have to use fight or flight to know when to run away from wolves or dragons. And I sat there in this therapy room and because I was pregnant, part of me went, maybe dragons did exist. And I really doubted myself as a silly pregnant woman. And no, this man had been watching Game of Thrones and he honestly thought that dragons were part of medieval British history.
Right. And on that note, I think we'll leave it. We won't give the name of the therapist for a multitude of reasons. But I gather from hearing all of this and all this enthusiasm, Georgia, that this is a fun community, isn't it? This is a happy place to be, actually. I gather.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've made an extraordinary number of friends purely through being in the same place dressed up as ridiculous characters. At one point, I ran the biggest Game of Thrones cosplay group in the world. It was like 60 people strong. And these people, even though I don't have time to run that anymore because I have a degree to not fail, they're still my closest friends. We still hang out, and it's kind of amazing that just a random TV show can bring all of these people together that I never would have met otherwise.
Well, thank you very much. That was really interesting. We heard from Georgia, from Danielle, and from Ruthy. And if you've got a view on Game of Thrones, you can let us know what you think on social media at BBC Woman's Hour.